In a research building at Radboud University in the Netherlands, 22 people took turns lying under a PET scanner. Not addicts, not patients. Regular people with regular phones. The team was measuring one thing, tretyl dopamine synthesis capacity, which is the chemical readout of how well your brain can build dopamine in the part that controls wanting. Then they compared each scan to how much time that person spent on social apps. The result was quiet. It should have gone viral. The more social scrolling in a person's week, the lower the synthesis capacity in their bilateral putamen. Not screen time in general, social apps specifically, in healthy young adults. So the mechanism people keep talking about is real. Scrolling downshifts your reward system, and now it is something you can see on a scan. This is where the story of dopamine detox actually starts. And I want to tell you that story properly, because most of what is online about the 100-hour protocol and monk mode has the science tangled. There are 4 people at the center of it. A neuroscientist who found the broken receptor 20 years ago, a Stanford doctor who explained what a broken receptor feels like, a psychiatrist who accidentally started a trend and spent 5 years trying to correct it, and a lab at MIT that discovered a completely different way to reset a brain. By the end of the next 12 minutes, you will know the mechanism, the honest limits, and the 7-day blueprint I built from the papers. The story begins with a woman named Nora Volkow. In the 1990s at Brookhaven National Laboratory, she was running the imaging lab, and she was scanning people, cocaine addicts, alcoholics, regular controls. She was looking at one specific dopamine receptor called D2. And in the scan after scan, she kept finding the same thing. In the addicted brains, the D2 receptors were down about 20% compared to the controls. 20% gone. Not busy, not sleeping, structurally reduced. She did not know it yet, but she had just found the mechanism for a trend that would blow up online 15 years later. Now, what is a receptor? It is a docking station on a neuron. Dopamine is the signal that docks there. If you have plenty of them, a normal reward gives a normal signal. If you have fewer of them, that same reward feels muted. Have you ever turned up the volume on a movie because it felt too quiet? Then the next scene blew the roof off the room. That is the addicted receptor. The knob is turned down, so the brain reaches for stronger and stronger signal. Dopamine is not the volume. The receptors are, and when the room stays loud too long, the knob turns itself down without you noticing. That is what downregulation actually means. Not too much dopamine, a brain that stopped listening as hard. Fast forward to August of 2021. To Stanford, the addiction medicine program is run by a doctor named Anna Lembke. She has been reading Volkow's work for years, and she publishes a book called Dopamine Nation, and she takes the receptor science and gives it a picture that has stuck ever since. Picture a seesaw in your head. On one side is pleasure, on the other side is pain. Every hit of dopamine tilts the seesaw toward pleasure, but the brain's job is to keep it level, so it tilts the other side back. It generates a matching pain response. Lemke wrote one line I keep thinking about. When our balance is tilted to the pain side, we crave our drug just to feel normal. That single sentence is the model of withdrawal. It is why the third afternoon of a detox can feel physically awful, even when nothing physical is happening. Your brain is trying to correct for a pleasure debt. And in the same book, Lemke drops in a clinical rule: 30 days. In her practice, she says the average time for the brain to reset the reward pathways is about 30 days. The first 2 weeks are the worst. Then the machinery starts to breathe again. I want to flag this. 30 days is her clinical experience, not the result of a randomized trial, but it is the closest thing to a peer number the field has, and every serious protocol I read eventually anchored to it. So the receptor story is real. The seesaw model is real. But here is where the story gets strange. The term dopamine detox, the whole trend, did not come from Volkow. It did not come from Lemke. It came from a completely different person. Rewind to the fall of 2019. A psychiatrist named Cameron Sipa, teaching at the University of California, San Francisco, posts a piece on LinkedIn and Medium. He calls it Dopamine Fasting 2.0. 6 weeks later, it lands in the New York Times, the BBC, and on ABC News. Silicon Valley eats it up. But here is the part that gets missed. In his own paper in italics, Sipa wrote a caveat: not reducing dopamine. And then, in parentheses, the focus is on reducing impulsive behavior. What he was proposing was a structured cognitive behavioral fast from 6 specific compulsive activities: emotional eating, screen scrolling, recreational drugs, novelty seeking, excitement seeking, and porn. That is the whole idea. It was CBT with a clever name, but the internet did what the internet does. It took Sipa's paper and turned it into monk mode. No music, no exercise, no eye contact, no food, no talking. Sipa spent the next year writing follow-ups that basically said, please stop. And in February of 2020, Harvard Health ran a piece by a doctor named Peter Grinspoon that landed the blow. Dopamine does rise in response to rewards, he wrote, but it does not actually decrease when you avoid overstimulating activities, so the fast does not drain the tank. The tank was never the problem. Zoom out for a second. That is the public story of dopamine detox. The receptor part is real, the framing is real, the trend that carried both was based on a paper the trend never actually read, and that could be a fine, complete video. Except for the last decade, in a completely different lab at MIT, someone else was quietly discovering another way to reset a brain. And it has almost nothing to do with putting your phone down. It has to do with a specific number, 40 hertz. The neuroscientist is Li-Huai Tsai. In December of 2016, her team publishes a paper in Nature. The title is dense. Gamma frequency entrainment attenuates amyloid load and modifies microglia. But what happens in the experiment is this. You flash a light in the eyes of a mouse at exactly 40 flashes per second, or you play a sound at 40 pulses a second, and the neurons in the mouse brain start firing in sync with that rhythm. Within about an hour of that exposure, the amount of amyloid plaque in the hippocampus dropped in a measurable way. Amyloid plaque is the substance implicated in Alzheimer's disease. This is not a dopamine finding. I want to be honest about that. It is an Alzheimer's finding. But over the following decade, Tsai's lab kept pulling the thread. In March of 2025, MIT published a review paper covering the whole program. They call it Genus. 40 Hz stimulation is now being studied for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, anxiety, epilepsy, MS, Down syndrome, and chemobrain. A company called Cognito Therapeutics is running a phase 3 Alzheimer's trial, and what makes the mechanism beautiful is what it seems to switch on. When cortical neurons fire in sync at 40 Hz, they appear to activate a system called the glymphatic system. Think of it as the brain's overnight cleanup crew. It clears the metabolic junk that piles up during a normal day. A Nature paper from Tsai's group in 2024 showed a specific interneuron type. It is called the VIP interneurons. These light up under 40 Hz stimulations and open the pipes. The brain gets a cleaner start. That is the finding. So does this matter for a dopamine reset? Honestly, the link is not proven. Tsai's mouse work has been about clearance and inflammation. The Parkinson's arm, and Parkinson's is a disease of dopamine neurons, is where the direct dopamine test lives. But the frequency itself does something interesting in human attention. Back in 2015, a lab in the Netherlands, led by Bruno Riedijk, published a small paper in Frontiers in Psychology. They played 3 minutes of 40 Hz binaural beats to healthy participants. Then, they measured attention on a classic visual task. The 40 Hz group had a tighter attentional spotlight than the control group. 5 years later, a 2020 paper in Scientific Reports by Nakul and colleagues showed 40 Hz training helped recovery from a cognitive lag. It is called the attentional blink. I have to give you the fair version of these results. The effect sizes are modest. The results do not replicate outside gamma frequency. There is no study showing that 40 Hz beats fix your attention span for good. What they show is a short-term nudge in a very specific direction, but add the pieces up. Syncing at 40 Hz seems to open the cleanup pipes. It also tightens the attentional spotlight for a task. Under those conditions, whatever reset a brain is doing might be running faster. Which brings us to the 100-hour protocol. Because at this point, every YouTube algorithm is pushing it, and people are asking real questions. Where does the number come from? What is supposed to happen at hour 100? Honestly, it comes from creators, not from a lab. Carey posted a 100-hour dopamine detox video. Leah Walsh did one. Others followed. The rules vary. No phone, no fun, sometimes no food. The claim that hour 100 is when your brain resets is anecdote. There's no paper that says the 4th day is when receptor sensitivity comes back online. What we do have is Lemke's 30-day floor, and more importantly, 2 large meta-analyses that landed in 2024. Ramadan and colleagues in a journal called Nara J pooled 10 studies covering 2,503 participants. What they found is that digital detox reliably reduces depression scores. The effect on general well-being was not statistically significant, reduces depression, not stress, not life satisfaction. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because it reframes who this reset is even for. It is not a productivity edge, it is a mental health intervention. If you are depressed, the detox helps. If you are looking for extra focus on your calendar, the evidence is thin. A second meta-analysis, Ansari and colleagues, pooled 26 studies across roughly 8,000 people, average age around 25. On aggregate, digital detox nudged subjective well-being upward, but if you look at the split alongside Ramadan's paper, the mechanism becomes clearer. Detox lifts mood. It does not sharpen you, which matters, because if you go in expecting a hit of energy, you will quit when it does not come. What the papers actually deliver is a floor of ordinary calm. So, here is the blueprint I pulled out of all of this. I call it the 7-day dopamine reset. It is a starter for the 30-day floor Lemke recommends. And it has 3 pillars. The first pillar is a behavior audit. This is SEPA's original protocol, not the internet's version. Pick 2 behaviors from his list, screen scrolling and one other, porn, snacking, multi-shopping, whatever it is for you. Cut those 2 behaviors for the full 30 days. Every other behavior stays normal. You still exercise, you still see friends, you still work. The narrow scope is the point. Monk mode fails because it tries to fight the whole brain at once. The second pillar is 40 Hz dosing. I want to be careful here. This is a hypothesis, not a treatment. Once during a normal evening for about 1 hour, you play a 40 Hz audio track, binaural beats or isochronic tones. This is the piece I am most speculative about. But look at what we do have. The glymphatic result, the attention data, and a downside close to 0. Given all of that, I think it earns a spot in the protocol. The third pillar is reward reintroduction. This is Lemke. Later in the reset, you bring back just one of the eliminated behaviors, not both. One, and you bring it back inside a specific window at a specific dose. That structured return is what teaches the reward system to weight ordinary stimuli again. What does the first week actually feel like? The opening phase is just counting. Every reach for one of the 2 behaviors gets noticed and written down. No fight yet, only a baseline. Then a normal pass through the usual behaviors, so the peaks are still fresh in your body. Then, the elimination phase begins. That is the stretch Lemke means when she says, the first 2 weeks are the worst. Somewhere in the elimination phase, the 40 Hz audio slots in for an hour in the evening. Eyes closed. Around the middle of the week is where most people quit. The novelty of doing something new has worn off. The withdrawal has not. Push through that stretch. At the close of the week, a measurement. On a piece of paper, a number 1 to 10 for how strong the pull toward each behavior still feels. That number is the baseline for the rest of the reset. The short version, a week of scaffolding, a month of receptor work, and one open hypothesis that a frequency researchers are studying for brain cleanup might be doing quiet work while the behavior change does the loud work. The seesaw is not a metaphor. It is Lemke's model of what your reward system does at the end of every day. It is Volkoff's receptor number. It is the wave pool when the peaks stop. What all this research shows is that your baseline for enjoyment is not fixed. It is negotiated every single day. By what you choose to do with your attention, the internet did not invent dopamine detox. Sepa did, and even he said the name was wrong. The other half of this reset happens in sleep. A specific slow wave stage seems to consolidate the reward pathway repair Lemke describes. That is the piece I am covering in the paired video on this channel. Subscribe if you want to see how the reset finishes overnight. INT count. 11 explicit register interrupts. Analogies. Volume knob, seesaw, wave pool, overnight cleanup crew. Name drops. Volkoff, Lemke, Sepa, Grinspoon, Tsai, Cognito, Redick, Nakul, Ramadan, Ansari, Carey, Walsh. Institutions. Brookhaven, Stanford, UCSF, MIT, Harvard Health, Radboud. 2. Let that sink in moments. Not addicts, normal people. Plus, sit with that for a second. Speculation labeled explicitly 40 Hz dosing equals hypothesis, not a treatment. Delivery, HeyGen Avatar, TTS, at approximately 180 to 190 words per minute. Target runtime approximately 13 minutes at 186 words per minute. Structure, hybrid/narrative. Story spine, Volkoff to Lemke to Sepa to Tsai to Meta-Analyses to Blueprint with segmented mechanism payoffs.